Commander Jiho Kim stood at the observation window of the Galactic Council headquarters, watching the stars spin slowly around the massive station. She had been stationed here for 3 years now, representing humanity among the 47 alien species that made up the council. Most days, her job was boring. She attended meetings, filed reports, and smiled politely at aliens who still weren't quite sure what to make of humans. Today was different. The urgent message had come through an hour ago. High Arbiter Velthus, the leader of the entire Galactic Council, wanted to see her immediately. That never happened. The High Arbiter usually dealt with problems between whole star systems, not individual officers. Jiho straightened her uniform and walked through the curved corridors of the station. Other species moved past her, some walking, some floating, some sliding on surfaces she couldn't see. After 50 years of contact with aliens, humans still found the diversity amazing and terrifying. The High Arbiter's chamber was enormous, designed to accommodate species of all sizes. Velthus himself was a Velcron, a species that looked like someone had crossed a lizard with a dragon and then made it stand upright. He was twice Jiho's height, covered in dark green scales, with eyes that seemed to see through everything. "Commander Kim," Velthus said, his voice coming through a translator device that turned his hissing speech into perfect Korean. "Thank you for coming quickly." "Of course, High Arbiter," Jiho replied, bowing her head slightly. "How can I help?" Velthus gestured with one clawed hand, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the room. It showed a dead planet, gray and lifeless, orbiting a distant star. 3 weeks ago, an archaeological team was exploring this world in the outer reaches, Velthus explained. It has been dead for at least 10,000 years. The team was searching for artifacts from the civilization that once lived there. Jiho nodded. She had read about such expeditions. The galaxy was full of dead worlds, places where civilizations had risen and fallen long before humans even learned to make fire. "They found something," Velthus continued. The hologram changed, showing a metallic object partially buried in gray dust. It looked ancient, covered in symbols that hurt to look at. A data cache. Very old. Very advanced. Very cache-in. Very old. "What kind of data?" Jiho asked. Velthus's scales rippled, which Jiho had learned meant he was uncomfortable. "That is why I called you, Commander. The data cache contained a message. When our linguists finally decoded it, they discovered it was written in multiple languages." He paused. "Human languages." Jiho felt her stomach drop. "That's impossible. 10,000 years ago, humans were still living in caves. We barely had language, let alone the technology to send messages to other star systems." "That is what we thought as well," Velthus said. "But the evidence is clear. The message contains Proto-Sumerian, ancient Sanskrit, and at least 15 other Earth languages, some so old that your own historians have no record of them. It also contains mathematical constants that are universal proof that whoever sent this message knew advanced science." The hologram changed again, showing lines of text in languages Jiho didn't recognize. But here and there, she could see symbols that looked almost familiar, like distant ancestors of modern writing. "What does the message say?" she asked quietly. Velthus looked at her for a long moment. Then he played the audio. The chamber filled with sound, dozens of voices speaking in overlapping languages, some deep, some high, all urgent and desperate. The translator worked to convert the ancient speech into modern Korean, and what Jiho heard made her blood run cold. "They are coming. We tried to stop them. Run. Take your children and run. Go to these coordinates. Hide. Stay silent. They are coming. They are coming. They are coming." The message repeated several times, the voices growing more desperate each time. Then it ended with a string of numbers, coordinates to multiple star systems, scattered across the galaxy. The silence that followed was heavy. "Show me those coordinates," Jiho said, her voice barely above a whisper. The hologram displayed a star map with several points highlighted. Jiho recognized some of them. They were the locations of other dead worlds. Civilizations that had vanished thousands of years ago. Every single coordinate points to a system where an advanced species once lived, Velthas said. And every single one of those species is now extinct. No survivors. No records of what happened to them. They simply disappeared. Jiho's mind raced. Has Earth ever sent out any expeditions to these systems? No. Velthas replied. These worlds died long before humans reached space. Before humans even had written language. According to your own historical records. Then how? Jiho started, but she couldn't finish the question. There is more, Velthas said, his tone growing darker. The archaeologists activated a beacon function in the cache, hoping to find more information. When they did, 37 other caches across the galaxy activated in response, all of them broadcasting the same message, all of them located near dead worlds. The hologram showed the network of caches spreading across the galaxy like a web of warning lights. The Council is concerned, Commander, Velthas said carefully. Some members are asking uncomfortable questions. They want to know why humans never mentioned this message. They want to know if your species has been hiding something from us since the day you joined the Council. Jiho felt anger flash through her. We've hidden nothing. Earth's historical records are open to anyone who wants to see them. We have no memory of any advanced civilization in our past. We climbed up from stone tools and fire, just like we've always told you. I believe you, Velthas said, and Jiho was surprised to hear that he meant it. But others do not. They think humans are playing a long game, pretending to be younger than you are. They think this message proves you've been lying. What do you want me to do? Jiho asked. I want you to find the truth, Velthas said. Take a team back to Earth. Search your ancient sites, your old ruins, your myths and legends. Find out if there is any explanation for this message. Because right now, Commander, trust in humanity is disappearing fast. Jiho nodded slowly. And if we can't find an explanation? Velthas's scales rippled again. Then the Council will have to consider the possibility that the message is real, that something destroyed dozens of civilizations across thousands of years, and that it might still be out there. He leaned forward, his massive form suddenly seeming much more dangerous. The message says, they are coming, Commander Kim. We need to know who they are. We need to know if they are still coming. And most importantly, we need to know why ancient humans tried to warn us about them. Jiho stared at the hologram, at the web of dead worlds and desperate messages. Somewhere in Earth's forgotten past, something terrible had happened. Something that made her ancestors send a warning across the stars. She just hoped she could find the truth before it was too late. I'll leave for Earth immediately, she said. Velthas nodded. Take whatever resources you need. The Council is assigning Inquisitor Draven to accompany you. He is fair, but he will be watching you closely. Many species are frightened, Commander. Frightened people do dangerous things. Jiho understood the warning. She bowed and turned to leave. But Velthas called after her. Commander Kim, one more thing. She turned back. The last part of the message. After the warnings and the coordinates. His voice was very quiet now. It says, we are the Wardens. We stood. We failed. Let the next cycle remember. Jiho felt a chill run down her spine. What does that mean? The next cycle? 1. Moped. 1. I do not know, Velthas said, but I think you need to find out. Dr. Hyun Park had been digging in dirt for 15 years, but he had never seen anything like this. The artifact site on the dead world was massive, far larger than the initial reports had suggested. What the first team thought was a single data cache turned out to be part of an entire underground complex. Be careful with that section, Hyun called out to his assistant, a young woman named Somin Choi, who served as both archaeologist and security officer. The metal is old. It might crumble. Somin nodded and adjusted her tools. Around them, a mixed team of humans and aliens worked to carefully expose more of the structure. The alien members of the team, mostly Velcrans and insectoid Hivaraths, kept their distance from the humans. Word about the mysterious message had spread quickly, and trust was fragile. Back on Earth, Jiho Kim was having her own problems. She stood in the middle of an excavation site in Turkey, where human civilization was supposed to have begun its climb from primitive villages to great cities. Beside her stood Inquisitor Draven, a Hivarath whose body looked like a cross between a praying mantis and a spider. His multiple eyes watched everything, and Jiho knew he was recording every detail. "Your historians say this site is 12,000 years old," Draven said, his chittering voice translated into Korean. "One of your oldest settlements." "That's correct," Jiho replied. She wiped sweat from her forehead. "This is where humans first learned to farm, to build permanent homes, to create civilization. And yet the message we found is 10,000 years old," Draven said. "According to your own records, humans at that time were primitive, simple farmers with stone tools." "Yes," Jiho said, frustrated. "That's what our records show. That's what all the evidence shows." "Then explain the message, Commander." Jiho couldn't. That was the problem. For 3 weeks, she and Draven had traveled across Earth, visiting ancient sites from Egypt to China to South America. They had examined pyramids, read old texts, studied cave paintings. Everywhere they went, they found the same thing: evidence that ancient humans were exactly as primitive as history books said they were. But they also found something else. In every ancient culture, there were myths about people who came before. Stories about advanced beings who fought great wars in the sky. Legends about teachers who gave humans knowledge and then disappeared. Tales about a time when the world was reset, when everything humanity had built was destroyed, and they had to start over. "These are just stories," Draven said when Jiho showed him a collection of myths. "Every primitive culture creates such tales." "Maybe," Jiho said. "But why are they so similar?" Ancient Sumerians talked about the Anunnaki, beings from the stars who taught them civilization. Ancient Indians wrote about the Devas and Asuras fighting wars with weapons that sound like nuclear bombs. The Mayans spoke of multiple worlds that came before this one, each one destroyed and rebuilt. "You think these myths are based on real events?" Draven asked. "I think something happened," Jiho said carefully. "Something that got turned into myths over thousands of years." Her communicator buzzed. It was a message from Hyun Park, marked urgent. "We need to see this," was all it said. 6 hours later, Jiho and Draven arrived at the dead world in the outer reaches. The journey through space was quiet and tense. When they finally landed near the excavation site, Hyun was waiting for them, excitement clear on his face. "You found something," Jiho said. "We found everything," Hyun replied. He led them down into the underground complex. The walls were covered in symbols and diagrams that made Jiho's head hurt to look at. Some of them were mathematical equations so complex that even the Council's best scientists couldn't fully understand them. "We activated a secondary system in the data cache," Hyun explained as they walked deeper into the structure. "It opened up this entire facility. And look." He pointed to a section of wall. Jiho stepped closer and felt her breath catch. The symbols on this wall were different. They were older, cruder, but she recognized them. They were early forms of human writing, mixed with languages from dozens of other species. "This facility wasn't built by the species that lived on this world," Hyun said. "It was built by a coalition, multiple species working together, and humans were part of it." "That's impossible," Draven said. "Humans didn't have space travel 10,000 years ago." "No," Hyun agreed. "We didn't. But apparently, we did 15,000 years ago." He led them to a central chamber. In the middle of the room stood a holographic projector, still functioning after all this time. Hyun activated it, and an image appeared, a star map showing the galaxy as it looked thousands of years ago. "Watch," Yun said. The map changed, showing the spread of civilizations across the galaxy. Dozens of species, including an advanced human civilization based on Earth and several colony worlds. Then, at the edge of the map, something appeared. It was hard to look at, like a hole in space, a wound in reality itself. The hole grew. Slowly at first, then faster. Everywhere it touched, civilizations disappeared. Whole star systems went dark. The map showed species after species falling silent. "What is that?" Jiho whispered. "We don't know," Hyun said. "But the data files call them the hollows. Entities that exist partially outside normal space. They consume civilizations not for resources or territory, but for something else. The files say they feed on sentient thought itself," the hologram continued. It showed a coalition of surviving species. The Wardens, they called themselves, gathering their forces. Humans were prominent among them. The Wardens fought desperately, using weapons that bent space and time. But they were losing. Then the hologram showed Earth. Ships, thousands of them gathered in orbit around the planet. The map showed massive energy readings building up, centered on Earth itself. "They built a weapon," Salmon said quietly. She had been watching from the doorway. "A weapon so powerful it could seal the breach the hollows were using to enter our galaxy. But the cost," Hyun said, his voice heavy. "The weapon required an enormous amount of energy. Energy that could only come from one source. The conscious minds of billions of sentient beings." Jiho felt sick. "They sacrificed themselves." "Not just sacrificed," Hyun corrected. "The weapon didn't kill them. It reset them. It took all their knowledge, all their advancement, all their memories, and converted it into pure energy. When it was done, the survivors were left alive, but they had forgotten everything. They were reduced to a primitive state, starting over from nothing." The hologram showed the aftermath. Earth, once a jewel of advanced civilization, now held only scattered tribes of humans who had forgotten they once reached the stars. The colonies were gone, destroyed in the fighting. Only Earth remained, and its people knew nothing of what they had been. The Wardens left these caches, Hyun continued. Warnings for the next cycle. They knew that eventually, civilizations would rise again. They hoped that when the Hollows found another way back, someone would be ready. Draven had been silent, but now he spoke. "If this is true, then the message makes sense. Ancient humans sent it because they knew the Hollows would return. They were trying to warn their own descendants." "There's more," Hyun said grimly. He brought up another display. The cache contained a prediction model. Based on the pattern of previous breaches, it calculated when and where the Hollows would try to enter our galaxy again. He highlighted a section of the map. The calculations pointed to a system near the galactic core. A system where a major civilization currently lived. Jiho's blood turned to ice. "That's Velara Prime. That's where the council headquarters is." "Yes," Hyun said. "And according to the calculations, the breach is already overdue. It could happen any day now." For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then, Draven activated his communicator. "I need to contact the High Arbiter immediately," he said. "This is a galaxy-level emergency." As Draven moved away to make his call, Jiho turned back to the hologram. It still showed Earth, 10,000 years ago, as humanity burned away its civilization to save the galaxy. "They gave up everything," she said quietly. "They had no choice," Hyun replied. "It was either that, or let the Hollows consume every thinking being in the galaxy." "Would we make the same choice?" Salmon asked. "If it came to that again?" Jiho thought about Earth, modern Earth, with its billions of people living in peace and prosperity. She thought about all the things humanity had built in the 50 years since joining the galactic community. Could they give all that up? "I don't know," she said honestly. "I really don't know." But deep down, she suspected she did know. because humans had made that choice before. And everything about human history, the persistence, the refusal to give up, the willingness to sacrifice for others, suggested they would make the same choice again. She just hoped it wouldn't come to that. Fleet Admiral Donghyun Yoon had been a soldier for 30 years. He had seen combat during the border conflicts with the Thraxian Empire. He had commanded peacekeeping missions across a dozen star systems. He thought he had seen everything the galaxy could throw at him. He was wrong. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was chaos. Representatives from 47 species shouted at each other in dozens of languages. Some demanded answers from the humans. Others wanted to flee immediately to the far edges of the galaxy. A few were calling for humanity to be arrested and interrogated. Ambassador Minji Park stood in the center of it all, trying to maintain order. She was Earth's chief diplomat, chosen for her calm demeanor and sharp mind. But even she looked overwhelmed. "Please," Minji called out over the noise. "We need to remain calm. The evidence shows that our ancestors fought these hollows before. They can be fought. They can be stopped. At what cost?" A Velcron representative hissed. "Your ancestors destroyed their own civilization. Do you expect us to do the same?" We expect nothing," Minji replied firmly. "We're sharing information. What you do with it is your choice." High Arbiter Velthus raised one clawed hand, and silence fell. "The immediate concern is the predicted breach at Velara Prime. If the calculations are correct, it could happen at any moment. We need to prepare our defenses." "Defenses?" A Hivarath representative chittered. "The records show conventional weapons were nearly useless against these things. How do you propose we defend ourselves?" That was when Captain Taewon Lee spoke up. He commanded the human defense vessel Time's Indomitable Asterisk, and he had just returned from Earth. "We may have a solution," Taewon said. All eyes turned to him. "While Commander Kim was investigating ancient sites on Earth, we made a discovery. There's a sealed vault beneath Antarctica, buried under 3 miles of ice. It's been there for at least 10,000 years. He activated a holographic display showing a massive underground facility. My team managed to open it yesterday. Inside, we found weapons. Advanced weapons specifically designed to fight enemies that exist partially outside normal space." The chamber erupted again, this time with fear and suspicion. "Humans have been hiding weapons?" Someone shouted. "We didn't know they were there." Minji shot back. "The vault was completely hidden. Even our most advanced sensors couldn't detect it until we knew exactly where to look." Taewon continued, his voice cutting through the noise. "The weapons are based on technology we don't fully understand yet, but the basic principle is clear: they target the dimensional breach itself. Not just the physical manifestation. If the hollows exist partially in another dimension, these weapons can hurt them in that other dimension." "How do you know they work?" Velthos asked. "We don't," Taewon admitted. "But the vault also contained detailed records of their use against the hollows 10,000 years ago. They worked then. They should work now." A Velcran scientist stepped forward. "How long would it take to reverse engineer these weapons and outfit our fleets?" "Too long," Taewon said. "Months, maybe years. We don't have that time." "Then what good are they?" the scientist demanded. Taewon looked at Minji, who nodded. He took a deep breath. "The Times. Indomitable Times has been retrofitted with these weapons. We've been working around the clock for the past 48 hours. It's not perfect, and we've only managed to install a fraction of what the vault contained. But it's operational." The chamber fell silent. "You're saying only one human ship can fight these hollows?" Velthos asked quietly. "For now, yes," Taewon said. "We're working to outfit more ships, including vessels from other species who are willing to trust us with their technology. But right now, we have one ship that can fight, and one crew that's ready to do it. That's suicide," someone said. "Maybe," Taewon agreed. "But it's better than doing nothing." The debate raged for hours. Some species wanted to evacuate Velara Prime and abandon the sector. Others wanted to wait and see if the breach even happened. A few wanted to throw everything they had at the problem, even if they weren't sure what the problem was. In the end, a decision was made. The Council would prepare for evacuation but also set up defensive positions. The Times, Indomitable Times, would serve as the first line of defense. Other ships would stand ready to support it, even if their weapons wouldn't be effective. 2 days later, Jiho stood on the bridge of the Times Indomitable Times next to Taiwan. Through the view screen, she could see Velara Prime, a beautiful blue and green world orbited by the massive Council station. "Are you sure about this?" she asked quietly. Taiwan smiled grimly. "No. But when has that ever stopped humans?" His crew worked at their stations, checking systems and running diagnostics on the ancient weapons they barely understood. There were 200 people aboard the Times, Indomitable Asterisk, and all of them had volunteered for this mission. They knew the odds. They came anyway. "Contact from the Council station," an officer called out. "They're detecting spatial anomalies near the fourth moon." Everyone on the bridge tensed. "Show me," Taiwan ordered. The view screen changed to show readings from long-range sensors. At first, there was nothing unusual. Then Jiho saw it, a tiny distortion in space, so small it barely registered on the instruments. "That's it," she breathed. "That's a breach." The distortion grew. Slowly at first, like a tear forming in fabric. Then faster. The sensors started screaming warnings as reality itself began to break down in that small area of space. And then they appeared. The hollows weren't ships. They weren't even matter as humans understood it. They were wounds in space. Dark tears in the fabric of reality that hurt to look at. Where they existed, stars seemed to dim. Space itself seemed to recoil from them. "How many?" Taiwan asked, his voice steady despite the horror on screen. "Sensors can't get an accurate count," the tactical officer replied. "They're not fully in our dimension. Best estimate is between 5 and 7 contacts." "More breaches forming," another officer called out. "Multiple contacts across the system." The Council's defense fleet moved to engage, but their weapons passed harmlessly through the hollows or simply disappeared when they got too close. Missiles vanished. Energy beams bent around the targets. Even antimatter warheads seemed to have no effect. 2 Council ships got too close to a hollow. Jiho watched in horror as they simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, they just stopped being there, converted into energy that fed the expanding breaches. "All ships, fall back." Velthas's voice came over the communication channel. "Do not engage." Repeat. "Do not engage." But the Times, Indomitable Times, moved forward. "Captain Lee, what are you doing?" Velthas demanded. "Our job," Taiwan replied calmly. Deep in the ship's hull, the ancient weapons came online. They didn't look like normal weapons. They were strange, twisted things that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions at once. Looking at them too long made crew members feel sick. "Weapons charged," the tactical officer reported. "Target lock acquired on the nearest contact." "Fire," Taiwan ordered. The Times Indomitable Times fired. What happened next was impossible to describe. The weapon didn't shoot energy or matter. It shot something else, a beam of collapsed space, a lance of inverted reality, something that existed in the same dimensional space as the hollows. The nearest hollow shuddered. Then it screamed. The sound came through every communication channel, every sensor, every piece of equipment on every ship in the system. It wasn't a physical sound. It was something felt in the mind, in the soul. It was the sound of something that should not be hurt, experiencing pain for the first time. The hollow retreated, pulling back through its breach. But the breach didn't close. Instead, more hollows poured through. And these were angry. "Evasive maneuvers," Taiwan called out. "Keep firing." The Times, Indomitable Times, dodged and weaved through space as the hollows tried to surround it. Every time the ship fired, a hollow screamed and retreated. But there were too many of them. and the ancient weapons needed time to recharge between shots. Hull breach on deck 7. Someone reported. A hollow grazed us. We're losing that entire section. Seal it off, Taewon ordered. How many weapons do we have left? 4 functional, the tactical officer said. 2 are overheating. If we push them any harder, they'll tear the ship apart. Jiho watched the battle unfold, feeling helpless. The Times. Indomitable Times was fighting bravely, but it was only one ship. The hollows kept coming, and the breaches kept growing. Then something unexpected happened. A Velcron cruiser moved forward, positioning itself between the Times, Indomitable Times, and a group of hollows. Its weapons were useless against the hollows, but it used its mass as a shield, buying the human ship time to recharge. Then another ship joined. And another. Soon, a dozen council vessels had formed a protective formation around the Times' indomitable asterisk, sacrificing themselves to give humanity's one weapon more time to work. Why are they doing this? An officer asked in wonder. Because they see us fighting, Jiho said quietly. They see us refusing to run. And it's giving them courage. Taewon activated the ship-wide communication. This is Captain Lee to all council vessels. Your sacrifice will not be forgotten. Hold position. We're going to end this. He turned to his tactical officer. Overload all remaining weapons. 1 concentrated burst, aimed at the largest breach. We're going to try to collapse it. Sir, that will destroy the weapons. Maybe the ship. I know. The Times. Indomitable Times turned toward the largest breach, the source of most of the hollows. Every remaining weapon charged to maximum, power levels climbing far beyond safe limits. Fire everything, Taewon said. The ship fired. The combined blast from the Times, Indomitable Times, hit the breach like a hammer. For a moment, space itself seemed to scream. The breach shuddered, contracted, and then collapsed in on itself. Dozens of hollows were caught in the collapse, torn back into whatever dimension they came from. But the victory came at a cost. 3 of the 4 ancient weapons destroyed themselves in the blast. Half the ship's power systems went offline, and the remaining hollows, driven to fury by the death of so many of their kind, swarmed the Times' indomitable asterisk. Evacuate the ship, Taewon ordered as alarms blared throughout the vessel. All crew to the escape pods. Go now. Captain, we can still fight, his tactical officer protested. With what? Taewon gestured at the dead weapons systems. We have 1 gun left, and no power to fire it. Get everyone off this ship. That's an order. Jiho grabbed Taewon's arm. You need to come too. He smiled sadly. Someone needs to buy time for the pods to get away. I've lived a good life, Commander Kim. Let me end it doing something that matters. Before Jiho could argue, Soman appeared at her side and physically dragged her toward the escape pods. He's made his choice. Respect it. As the crew evacuated, council ships moved in to cover their retreat. Many didn't make it. Jiho watched through the viewport of her escape pod as ship after ship was consumed by the hollows, sacrificing themselves so others could escape. The Times, Indomitable Times, was the last ship standing, its single remaining weapon firing again and again, until finally, it too fell silent. The hollows swarmed over it, and it simply ceased to exist. But Taewon had bought them time. The evacuation fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed, carrying refugees away from Velara Prime. Behind them, the hollows continued to pour through multiple breaches, consuming the abandoned planet. The Galactic Council was in ruins. Not just the station, the entire governmental structure had collapsed. Species that had cooperated for centuries now turned on each other, in fear and desperation. Some blamed humanity for bringing this curse. Others simply ran, fleeing to the far edges of the galaxy. President Eunji Song addressed what remained of the council from a secure bunker on Earth. She was an old woman, weathered by decades of service, but her voice was strong. We have seen the enemy, Eunji said. We know what we face. The question now is, What will we do about it? Run, a Velcran representative said bluntly. Take our ships and flee beyond the galaxy's edge. Maybe the Hollows won't follow. They will, Hyun Park said. He stood beside Unji, surrounded by data and holographic displays. The ancient records are clear. The Hollows don't stop. They can't stop. They exist to consume. They will chase us to the end of the universe if necessary. Then what choice do we have? Someone asked, desperately. We have the choice our ancestors made, Unji said quietly. We can fight. And we can win. She nodded to Hyun, who brought up a holographic display. It showed the Antarctic vault and the technology it contained. The ancient wardens built a weapon called the Beacon Array, Hyun explained. It's not just one device. It's a network of installations that work together. When activated simultaneously, they create a dimensional seal across the entire galaxy. The seal forces the Hollows back to their own dimension and closes every breach permanently. We've seen what their weapons can do, a Hivarath representative said. Why not just use those? Why build something new? Because the weapons can fight the Hollows, but they can't seal the breaches, Hyun said. As long as the breaches exist, more Hollows will come. We could fight for 1,000 years and never win. The only way to truly end this is to seal the breaches. What's the cost? Velthos asked. He had survived the fall of Valara Prime, though his scales were now scarred from burns. Hyun hesitated. Then he said, The Beacon Array requires an enormous amount of energy. Energy that can only come from one source, the conscious minds of every sentient being in the galaxy. The room fell silent. You're talking about the same sacrifice your ancestors made, Veltha said slowly. You want us to give up everything. Our memories, our knowledge, our civilizations. Everything. Not everything, Jiwon Han spoke up. She was a scientist who had been studying the ancient technology around the clock. We can preserve information in hidden caches, like the one we found. We can leave warnings and instructions for the next cycle. The physical infrastructure of our civilizations will survive cities, ships, technology. Only the minds will be reset. With the Vita Ford, with people the story, with process. Only the minds? Someone said, incredulously. That's everything that makes us who we are. Yes, Unji said simply. It is. And that's why this must be a choice. Every sentient being in the galaxy has the right to decide their own fate. We will not force this on anyone. What's the alternative? A young Velcran asked. We fight with what we have, Unji said. We use the ancient weapons. We try to hold them back conventionally. Maybe we get lucky. Maybe we find another solution. She paused. Or maybe we lose, and every thinking being in the galaxy is consumed. The debate that followed lasted for days. Representatives argued, pleaded, and raged. Some species said they would rather die fighting than give up who they were. Others wanted to run, to buy time, to find another way. A few suggested surrendering to the Hollows and hoping for mercy, until someone pointed out that the Hollows didn't understand mercy. They only understood hunger. Humanity's position was clear from the start. In a planet-wide referendum, 78% of humans voted to activate the Beacon Array. They had done it before. They would do it again. We are wardens, Unji said in her speech to the human population. Our ancestors stood against the darkness. They sacrificed everything so that life could continue. That is who we are. That is what we do. But the other species were divided. Some admired humanity's courage. Others thought humans were suicidal zealots. The arguments grew more heated as more systems fell to the Hollows. Minji worked tirelessly to build consensus. She traveled from refugee fleet to refugee fleet, speaking with representatives of every species. She didn't ask them to choose sacrifice. She simply showed them the data. In 3 months, The hollows will have consumed a third of the galaxy, she said at one meeting. In 6 months, half. In a year, there will be nowhere left to run. These are the facts. What you do with them is your choice. Slowly, painfully, a consensus began to form. Not everyone agreed. It could never be everyone. But one by one, species began to vote for activation. The Velcrans were the first non-human species to commit. If humans can do this twice, we can do it once, Velthus said. His species had lost their homeworld. They had nothing left to lose. The Hyveraths followed. Then the Thoraxians. Then more. Some voted as whole species. Others split, with parts of their population choosing to flee instead. The galaxy fractured along lines of hope and fear. In the end, 70% of the galaxy's civilizations voted to activate the beacon array. It wasn't unanimous, but it was enough. We have 3 months to build the array, G1 announced. Every species that voted yes has engineers working around the clock. We're building installations on worlds across the galaxy, all connected through dimensional technology we barely understand. Will it work? Someone asked. The mathematics says yes, G1 replied. But we've never tested it. We won't know for sure until we activate it. And if it doesn't work, then we'll die as ourselves rather than as food, Unji said. That's something at least. The 3 months that followed were both the most productive and most heartbreaking in galactic history. Engineers of 47 species worked together, sharing knowledge freely for the first time. Old rivalries were forgotten. Ancient grudges were set aside. Everyone had the same goal: finish the array before the hollows consumed them all. But it wasn't just about building. It was also about remembering. Jiho led teams across the galaxy, placing hidden caches similar to the one that had started everything. They filled these caches with historical records, scientific knowledge, and cultural information. They included instructions for finding the beacon array and warnings about the hollows. Someday, someone will find these, Jiho said, as she sealed another cache. They'll learn what we did. They'll know we stood and fought. Will they understand why? Soman asked. She had stayed by Jiho's side throughout the crisis. I don't know, Jiho admitted. I hope so. I hope they see that some things are worth more than individual survival. That protecting life itself, even at the cost of everything we are, is not weakness. It's the strongest thing anyone can do. On Earth, preparations took on a different tone. Humans knew what was coming. They had 3 months to say goodbye to everything they were. Families gathered. People recorded messages for descendants they would never remember. Artists created final works. Writers composed last words. Everyone tried to leave something behind, some proof that they had existed, that they had mattered. A young child named Youngsu played in a park, unaware that soon he would forget his own name. His mother watched him, memorizing every detail of his face, knowing that in 3 months she wouldn't recognize him. Will it hurt? Youngsu asked. He was smart for his age. He understood that something was happening. No, his mother said, pulling him close. You'll just go to sleep, and when you wake up, you'll be starting a new adventure. Will you be there? Always, she promised, though she knew it wasn't true. Always. The final day arrived. The beacon array was complete. 47 installations spread across the galaxy, all synchronized and ready. The fleets had fallen back, buying time for the array to be activated. Unji gave the final address from Earth. Every screen in the galaxy showed her face. To all who hear this message, she began. We stand at the end of an age and the beginning of another. What we do today will echo across the millennia. Future civilizations will find our warnings and wonder who we were. Yunji continued her speech, her words carried to every world, every ship, every listening ear across the galaxy. Let us tell them who we were. We were 47 species who put aside our differences to face extinction together. We were mothers and fathers who chose to give our children a future, even if we couldn't remember them. We were soldiers who fought, knowing the only victory was sacrifice. We were the wardens, and we stood. She paused, looking directly into the camera. To those who come after, to the humans who will rebuild from nothing, to the Velcrans who will crawl from their caves again, to every species that will rise once more, know this. You are not weak because you were reset. You are strong because you survived. We gave you life. Make it count. 1, 2. Jiho stood in the command center of the Antarctic vault, surrounded by engineers from a dozen species. The beacon array was ready. All 47 installations reported green status. Outside, the hollows were less than a day away from Earth. All systems synchronized, Jiwan reported. She looked exhausted. None of them had slept in days. We can activate on your command. Jiho looked around at the faces surrounding her. Humans, Velcrans, Hivaraths, Thoraxians, and more. All of them were about to forget everything, their names, their families, their entire existence. And yet, not one of them looked afraid. Does anyone want to say anything? Jiho asked. Velthas stepped forward. The old Velcron had insisted on being here for the final moment. I have lived for 200 years. I have seen wonders and horrors beyond counting. And I can say with certainty that standing here, with all of you, preparing to do this impossible thing, this is the greatest moment of my life. Others nodded in agreement. Then let's make sure it matters, Jiho said. She placed her hand on the activation panel. On my mark. 3, 2, 1. Activate. The beacon array came to life. It started as a hum, a vibration that could be felt rather than heard. Then it grew, spreading across the galaxy at faster than light speed. Every installation activated simultaneously, creating a dimensional wave that swept through space itself. The effect was immediate. The hollows, scattered across hundreds of systems, suddenly found themselves being pushed back. The breaches that connected their dimension to this one began to collapse. They fought desperately, trying to pour more of themselves through before the doors closed forever. But the beacon array was stronger. The dimensional seal spread like light, driving back darkness. One by one, the breaches sealed. The hollows screamed in rage and frustration as they were forced back into the void where they belonged. In the command center, Jiho felt it beginning. The array was drawing energy from every conscious mind in the galaxy. It didn't hurt. It was almost peaceful, like falling asleep. Her thoughts began to slow. Memories started to fade. She looked at Jiwan, who was smiling even as her eyes grew distant. Did we do it? Yes, Jiwan said, though Jiho wasn't sure if she understood the question anymore. We did it. Velthas collapsed first, his ancient body giving up as his mind emptied. The others followed, one by one. Engineers slumped over their stations. Scientists who had spent lifetimes learning simply stopped knowing. Warriors who had fought for decades forgot what fighting was. Jiho tried to hold on, tried to remember why she was here, but the memories slipped away like water through her fingers. She thought she had been doing something important. She thought there were people she cared about. But the thoughts wouldn't stay. Her last coherent memory was of Earth, her beautiful, broken Earth that had sacrificed itself twice to save the galaxy. She hoped someone would remember that. She hoped it would mean something. Then the thought was gone. And so was she. Across the galaxy, trillions of minds simply stopped. Not dead, they still lived, still breathed, still existed. But everything that made them who they were had been burned away to fuel the seal. The hollows made one final push, throwing everything they had against the closing breaches. But it was too late. The dimensional seal clicked into place, solid and unbreakable. The breaches collapsed completely. The hollows were banished, sealed away in their own dimension, with no way to return. The galaxy was saved, and the price was everything. The ships drifted in space, their crews alive but unable to remember how to operate them. Cities stood empty. their populations wandering, confused, and afraid. Technology sat unused by people who had forgotten it existed. Slowly, very slowly, they began again. On Earth, Young-Soo woke up in a field. He didn't remember falling asleep. He didn't remember his name. He didn't remember anything. But he was alive, and he was hungry, and he saw fruit growing on a nearby tree. He walked toward it, and others followed him, people he didn't know but who looked like him. Together, they figured out how to pick the fruit. Together, they figured out how to make fire. Together, they began to rebuild. They wouldn't build quickly. It would take thousands of years to climb back to the stars. But they would climb. Humanity always did. On Velcra Prime, in the ruins of their ancient cities, Velcrans emerged from caves they didn't remember entering. They looked at the strange structures around them and wondered what they were for. Slowly, carefully, they began to learn. On Hivera, the Hyveraths formed new colonies, their genetic memory helping them rebuild faster than most. On Theraxis, on Velara, on 47 worlds across the galaxy, species started over. The cycle had begun again, 10,000 years later. A young archaeologist named Jiho, she didn't know she had been named after someone important, discovered a strange metallic object buried in Antarctic ice. It was covered in symbols she didn't recognize. "What do you think it is?" her assistant asked. "I don't know," Jiho said. "But I think we should open it." Inside the vault, they found wonders. Technology beyond imagination. Records of civilizations that had reached the stars. And a message, recorded in dozens of languages, including ancient Korean. Jiho listened to it, her heart racing as she heard her own language spoken by people who had been dead for 10,000 years. The message talked about a threat from beyond. It talked about sacrifice. It talked about standing and fighting, and it ended with a warning. They will return. They always do. When they come back, remember what we did. Remember that life is worth protecting, no matter the cost. Remember that you are wardens. And stand. Jiho stood in that ancient vault, surrounded by the legacy of people she would never know. And she understood. The last message from Earth wasn't a plea for help. It wasn't a cry of despair. It was a warning from those who had stood before, to those who would stand again. The Hollows would return. Maybe not today. Maybe not for another 10,000 years. But they would return. Because that was their nature. And when they did, humanity would be ready. Because some lessons were written so deep in the human soul that even total memory loss couldn't erase them. The willingness to sacrifice, the refusal to give up, the determination to protect life, even at the cost of everything. These weren't things humans learned. They were things humans were. Jiho activated her communicator. "I need to speak with the Galactic Council," she said. "We've found something they need to see. Something everyone needs to see." The cycle had turned again. Civilizations had risen. Humanity had climbed back to the stars and found their neighbors doing the same. The Galactic Council had reformed, though none of them remembered the previous one. And now, someone had found the warning. In space, invisible to any sensor, a tiny distortion appeared near the edge of the galaxy. It lasted less than a second before disappearing. The Hollows were testing the dimensional seal, probing for weakness. They had all the time in the universe. Eventually, they would find a way through. And when they did, they would discover that the wardens were waiting. They always were. On Earth, Young-Soo, the grown man, not the child he had been looked up at the stars with his granddaughter. She had just asked him why humans always seemed drawn to space, why they always wanted to reach further, explore more, push boundaries. He didn't know the answer. How could he? The memory of why had been burned away 10,000 years ago. But somewhere deep inside, in a place that existed beyond memory, something new. "Because that's what we do," he said simply. "We reach. We explore. We protect." "Protect what?" his granddaughter asked. He looked at her curious eyes and bright mind. and smiled. Everything. Above them, the stars shone steady and bright. Between those stars, ancient caches drifted through the void, their warnings still broadcasting after all these years. 47 installations of the beacon array stood ready, maintained by automated systems that would run forever. And on 47 worlds, people who had forgotten everything continued to live, to grow, to reach for the stars, because that was the gift the wardens had given them. Not just survival, the chance to live, to dream, to become something more. And if the price of that gift was to forget who had given it, well, that was acceptable. The wardens hadn't done it for gratitude. They had done it because it needed to be done. They had done it because they were guardians. They had done it because they stood, and somewhere in the depths of space, sealed away in another dimension, the hollows waited and planned and probed. They had been beaten twice. They would not be beaten a third time, but they didn't understand. They didn't comprehend the nature of what they faced, because humans and the 46 species who stood with them would face them again, would sacrifice again, would stand again, not because they remembered, but because it was who they were. The last message from Earth ended with a simple statement, repeated in every language. We are the wardens. We stood. We will always stand. Let the cycle remember. And the cycle did remember. Not in words or records, but in actions, in choices. In the moment when sapient beings looked at extinction and chose to fight anyway. That was the real message. That was the real warning. Not that danger was coming, but that when it did, someone would stand against it. Someone would sacrifice. Someone would be the guardian of all that came after. Because that was what wardens did, and that was what they would always do, forever.